Well, this week saw the NFL draft and WWE saw it and said, hey, hold my beer, but the results may vary at this point. But, we'll talk more about that when we get there. But hi, all you BC WrestlePod nerds out there, and welcome to another rendition of the Friday Night Faction Reviews, your weekly review squad. I am your host, Mikey, and joining me this week is my other Smackdown co-host, Minnie. Thank you for being here, my friend. It's been a bit since we got together for a Smackdown.
I feel like I missed last week, but everybody else was here. Then I show up this week and everybody else is gone.
Yeah, it's wild for sure.
Oh shit, hold on. Let me pull it back up. Oh, I closed YouTube.
Look, this week's SmackDown was a placeholder because we had a draft. We had memes. Kind of.
He appears. I believe in Joe
I blame
Hendry.
Mikey exclusively for this.
I'm Hendry. Cause you love in London and Paris and Tokyo.
All right, we should probably cut it off before we get copyrighted.
I don't think we're gonna get copyrighted. This is personal.
Well, I mean, technically the song isn't out yet. It releases tomorrow, but that's besides the point.
That's his normal. That's like the 1 minute version of it. That's
right.
Like he uses for his entrances. Which, by the way, every time I think of TNA now, that song gets stuck in my head thanks to the TNA flux.
Me, Andrew, and Will say you're welcome. But we're here to talk about SmackDown, which honestly wasn't necessarily a bad show. I mean, we built to some matches for Backlash. We had a draft, but nothing was
it was entertaining. It was entertaining
for sure.
If you like just to sit down and watch a little bit of wrestling and just be entertained, it did that.
So let's not waste time. Let's just jump right into it. So after we get a little bit of, recap and clips of certain superstars, we begin with Caleb Braxton backstage with Paul Heyman. And Paul Heyman lets us be known that tonight is the draft. However, Roman Reigns has withdrawn his eligibility from the draft. And the reasoning is because Roman Reigns for the last 4.5 years has made SmackDown his home and has become the biggest star when it comes to WWE right now. And so he's not going to hog the number one draft pick in the spotlight. So he's going to withdraw himself, and that's not what a real tribal chief would do. And so now Nick Aldis has to decide who he's going to pick if Roman's not going to be the number one draft pick. And Paul Heyman says, well, we shall see, and walks away. I'm like, okay, so Roman's not coming back anytime soon. He's technically a free agent now.
We're probably not seeing him till SummerSlam.
Yeah, we're probably not going to see him till SummerSlam. And we'll talk about the remnants of the Bloodline because they also made themselves felt throughout this whole entire episode.
Yeah, we're probably going to wait till we get the full mighty force of Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga and Solo Sikoa.
So from Caleb Braxton, we cut to Jackie Redmond, who is inside NXT Performance Center with all of the NXT folks, and to see if any NXT people will be called to the main roster, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So we go back to SmackDown, where Corey Graves is in the ring with two tables set up. We're about to have this contract signing, and so first AJ Styles comes out, and then Cody Rhodes. We have a very tame contract signing because AJ basically talks about that he doesn't respect LA Knight and he allowed him to get under his skin. That's why he lost at WrestleMania, but he beat LA Knight to earn the right to fight Cody at Backlash, who he respects. And, AJ mentions to Cody that they've been down the same roads to prove themselves outside of WWE. And, a man gave him some advice a long time ago, and it happened to be the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, which then prompts the crowd to try Dusty, and AJ learned a lot from him, but he's going to come and get that title from Cody, signs the contract. Cody retorts back that he also respects AJ Styles, and that carrying this championship is a lot of weight, and he's going to do whatever it takes to defend this, and Cody signs the contract. Both men stand up, they shake hands, and that is how that contract signing ends.
It was nice to actually, see a contract signing that it ended bloodshed.
Absolutely, because I'm so trained to seeing these contract signings go sideways so often, but it was really nice that this feud is being built upon respect, which I'm super excited to see, and I think this is going to be a fun match at Backlash. So as Cody's walking up the ramp, Triple H's music hits, and this is where we get the first round of the draft. So to review the rules real quick, if you were not paying attention to social medias or this is your first time, be like, WWE has a draft? The answer to that question is yes, but kind of. It depends on who gets placed to where, because after tonight, the majority of folks stayed put with only some trades, but we'll talk about that as we get there. But Triple H has Cody join him to do these draft picks, and this is how we get through this. So in the first draft, the first round draft, the rules are all the champions except for our WWE Women's Tag Team Champs are locked into their current brands. So that means that Damian Priest, Becky Lynch, who is now your new champion after this past week, and Awesome Truth, along with Sami Zayn, are staying on Raw, so they're not going nowhere. And on the flip side of SmackDown, Cody Rhodes, Bayley, A-Town Down Under, and Logan Paul are on SmackDown. So they're locked in. They're not getting traded. They're not leaving those brands.
I like how every championship is staying where they're at, except for the women's tag team championships, the only one that can get drafted.
That is very true, which also means that the NXT champions are also staying put too. So Trick's not going anywhere. Obafemi's not going anywhere. Roxanne is not going anywhere. And Axiom and Nathan Frazier are also locked in too.
Every championship across all three brands are locked in, minus the women's tag team championships.
Yeah,
which
makes sense.
But it makes sense because that's been like the main belt that has traveled back and forth between brands.
Between all the brands. So we get into our first round draft picks for the SmackDown. Their first draft pick is the EST herself, Bianca Belair. So Bianca is staying on SmackDown, which makes a lot of sense.
That's a trend we're going to see throughout this entire first day of the draft.
Yes, this first night, pretty much, we only had
Make your predictions, they're probably right.
Yeah. So Raw's number one pick ends up being main event Jey Uso. So Jey is staying on Raw, which Cody kind of spoiled that like 2 weeks ago when he cut that promo calling Jey the main babyface for Raw since he's going to be going to SmackDown. I was like, Cody kind of spoiled that.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter though. I mean, but I like the fact that these two were the number one picks. Like, yeah, they're staying on the same brands, but it's showing how much the company wants these two to be in the spotlight. With like the first pick of the entire draft was Bianca Belair.
Yeah, and Bianca holds a special spot as she's only the third woman in WWE draft history to be number one pick. The other two being Becky and Charlotte.
And keep in mind, she's not even going for a main belt. She's going for the tag belts with Jade Cargill. So it's telling you that these tag belts are going to be like, I think they're pushing it's going to be worth something.
Right. And, depending, and we'll talk about it when we get to the end of this for our bumpers before we get to the main event of the evening, because we got SmackDown made 3 matches for Backlash, which we'll get into a little bit later. But next up, after Jey Uso gets picked for Raw, SmackDown picks up and calls up our boy. He is him. Carmelo Hayes gets drafted to SmackDown, which I think is an excellent choice. Remember, we all talked about this a couple of months ago, that when we were looking at, the NXT folks who we thought were ready to get called up, Carmelo Hayes should get called up and should be put on SmackDown because I think he would thrive better on SmackDown than Raw. And that is exactly what happened. Carmelo gets drafted and moves from NXT to SmackDown. And then for the final pick of the first round, Raw selects Seth Rollins, who is going to be staying on Raw, which makes sense. And that is our first round.
Make your predictions. Or, if you predicted that 99% of superstars are staying on the same roster they're already on, you were correct.
I was really happy though, as one of the 3 hosts in this eclectic group of 9 that reviews NXT. I'm very happy to see, they use this first round to be like, oh yeah, we're taking SmackDown's taking Carmelo Hayes. Duh. So super excited for that.
I was happy to see Melo get drafted, but at the same time, I wish he would have stayed just a little bit longer so we can get like a more definitive conclusion between him and Trick. We talked about that when we did our stand and deliver. It was like, it was cool. That match ended weird. I wish there was more and they would have done one more, but I'm hoping that happens on the main roster now.
We'll revisit that because technically we did get a finite conclusion like 2 weeks ago. They had a cage match in which Trick won, but even that was like That was very quick. And we talked about it over there during the review. We're just like, I feel that with the draft looming, they're like, all right, we got to start wrapping some things up real quickly, faster than we would like to, because who knows where everyone's going to end up after the draft. But as soon as this first round was over, this prompts Carmelo Hayes to come out and tell Cody that ever since Cody won the title, Melo says that if he's going to come for the king, if you come for the king, you best not miss, which sets up our main event for the evening. Cody will be taking on Carmelo, which I'm just like, wow, we're already starting off strong.
Hey,
like, get this man in front.
There was 3 main NXT people showcased tonight. They made all 3 look good.
Yes, which thank you, Triple H, for not seeing NXT as an inferior underneath another person who was in former position of power, because NXT is your third brand and it should be. So it was really nice. This sets up our main event for Carmelo and Cody later on in the evening, which was super fantastic. We go to commercial, and when we come back, we are entering our tag team match, where once again we're seeing Legato del Fantasma taking on LWO. So this was a very quick match, as all of these matches have been for a very long time. Not really much to say. I thought this was fun for the time we got, but ultimately LWO picks up the victory here. And yeah, so LWO wins the tag team match.
Quick. I'm so fucking tired of this feud, dude.
Well, it seems that we're moving away from Legato and LWO to some more internal fighting, because Santos comes out with Elektra Lopez and says that Santos is many things, but he is not a liar. And then he doubles down, saying he didn't attack Dragon Lee before WrestleMania. And he shows the footage of what we already knew. Carlito was the one who attacked Dragon Lee, and we got the grainy backstage footage. And then Carlito gives us the deer in headlights moment before, and everyone's just like, Carlito, why would you do this? I can't believe you did this. So Carlito pushes Ray and hits Dragon Lee on the way out again. Dragon Lee's just getting beat up for no reason in this feud. But Carlito leaves the ring, and I'm like, dang, Ray can't catch a break. Everybody just turns on him eventually.
Everybody except for Dragon Lee, I guess.
And ultimately, like, when we look at this with the tag team match and then what happened afterwards, I feel like this tag team match was mostly just set up for what was truly what we cared about, which was all of the fallout, with Carlito being revealed as the person who attacked Dragon Lee. But the match itself, there wasn't enough done for, in this match, but it was fine. So once again, we cut to commercial, and this is where we also get a very short match, because this is a squash match. Braun Breaker versus our boy Cedric Alexander. Poor Cedric.
Match was like 10 seconds long. The match was over when Braun started the match with the straps down.
I was like, oh, it's about to be wrapped. Like, I did like that, as when the match started, Braun tries to go for a clothesline, but Cedric ducks. I was like, oh, there's hope. Cedric tries the chops, but obviously it's not going to do nothing.
Chop, springboard. Spear that killed him.
Yeah, the handstand run, and then got greeted with the spear. Braun Breaker wins this match. I want better things for my boy Cedric.
Which is weird, because we just got like a whole thing where he's gonna be like, looks like he's gonna be part of a tag team. And then
we're still waiting on that.
The only other person, like, who else would you throw out there to get squashed by Braun Breaker?
That's very fair.
The only other person I would think about is Akira Tozawa, but he's on Raw.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about him in a little bit, because all of Alpha Academy got drafted to a certain place. But this was
the same place.
Yeah, to the same place. This was a squash match, as we say in Ring of Honor, not a squash, but a squatch. This was a squash match. Braun Breaker is the winner, and we move on from this. We get clips of what happened in the match last week between Bayley and Naomi, with Tiffany attacking both, causing a DQ. In which we go backstage with Nick Aldis leaving his office, and Tiffany is there to tell him that she dropped Naomi and Bayley last week. And so when is her match going to be against Bayley for the championship? Nick Aldis tells Tiffany it's not Tiffy time on his watch, and that she's going to have to go to the back of the line until, someone gave him an idea that Tiffany and Naomi will have a number 1 contenders match tonight, and the winner will go to face Bayley for the WWE Women's Championship at Backlash. And then we end this by Tiffany saying, whose dumb idea was this? And Bayley comes in saying it was hers. Tiffany tells Bayley that, you could be at ringside to watch me beat up Naomi. Yeah. So we're getting a number one contenders match later in the evening, which is fine. Before we hit commercial break, we see Michelle McCool and Tori Wilson coming down with draft pick cards. And then when we come back from said commercial, they both come out and we get our second round draft picks. So, so I'm going to start right here. For the first pick in the second round, SmackDown picks Randy Orton. So Randy is staying on SmackDown. And I'm like, good.
Yep. So, but we didn't need to hear that. All right. What's next?
This is the only real change that we had because Rob selects and Braun Breaker is moving from SmackDown to Monday Night Raw as Raw picks Braun Breaker. So we're keeping Braun and Melo separate, which I think is a smart idea because we want them to be individuals. But I'm ready for when we want to run Braun and Carmelo back again.
Yeah. I mean, smart decision, WWE. But hear me out. Why the fuck did we go through that whole thing with Nick Aldis signing Brock Breaker to SmackDown for this to happen?
Yeah, it kind of renders the point moot, as the kids say. SmackDown's second pick in the second round is also moving over from a different brand. SmackDown selects Nia Jax, so she will be moving from Monday Night Raw to Friday Night SmackDown, which I think is a fantastic idea because not to say that Nia wasn't doing great over on Monday Night Raw, but SmackDown definitely needs more depth in its women's division. And having Nia come over to SmackDown adds something because Raw has a lot of women. And we've been saying the whole time that SmackDown, outside of Damage Control and a select other few, we felt that the depth that the women's division on the main roster was very uneven. But Nia's moving over to SmackDown. And then in the final pick, Raw's final pick in the second round draft is that Raw selects Liv Morgan to stay on Monday Night Raw, which we're like, duh, because she's going to be going after Becky at some point, so we can't have her on SmackDown. And with Rhea out on injury, Becky and Liv's feud is probably going to be our big women's plot over on Raw leading into SummerSlam. But yeah, so this round I enjoyed because Liv and Randy are staying on their respective brands, but Braun and Nia are switching, which was nice to see. I'm ready for Braun Breaker to start destroying people.
We're all ready for Braun Breaker to be like,
I need him and Chad Gable to fight. Like, honestly, Braun versus everyone, just general on Raw. Like, that's what I want to see. So after this round, we get, recap clips of Tama Tonga attacking Kevin Owens last week, which we didn't talk about. There was a whole car crash and Kevin Owens bleeding on television, which was wild to watch. I was like, this is getting good.
Which is good. I feel like it's funny how they've saved all their blood spots for the Bloodline.
That's funny. After these clips, Paul Heyman is backstage and, waiting for this black SUV to roll up. And he stands there for a few seconds and apologizes as he opens the door. And Tama Tonga and Solo Sikoa, come out. And Solo asks that if the Bloodline has gotten drafted yet. Heyman says no. Solo asks him, you better give me all these details. Heyman tells Solo that Roman was excluded from the draft. And Solo is going to be adding new members to the Bloodline. And no one wants to know, and no one knows what they are getting when they draft the Bloodline. Tama Tonga and Solo with Heyman in tow, enter everything. And at this point, Kevin Owens attacks Tama Tonga from behind, and the WWE officials have to break it up. Because Kevin Owens wants a lick back because Tama Tonga made him bleed last week, and Kevin Owens wants to fight him.
Well, you gotta remember, it's KO. It's
fight Owens fight. Hello.
He's just as crazy as Tama Tonga.
Yes, he is. So we cut to commercial break, and when we come back, Kayla Braxton is on the ramp, and she introduces Bianca Belair. As Bianca comes out, Kayla congratulates her on being the first overall pick, not just in the draft in general, but for SmackDown as well. And Bianca says that at Backlash, her and Jade are going to take on the Kabuki Warriors for the Women's Tag Team Championship. And Bianca hopes that, Jade gets drafted to SmackDown this upcoming Monday because Jade is on the Monday Night Raw pool of talent to be drafted. And so that way, Jade is the perfect person to help her take down Damage Control. Spoiler alert. I think that Jade and Bianca are probably going to take those titles at Backlash, but who knows? Who truly knows? So the Kabuki Warriors come out, and then they have a stare down with all four women here. Everyone argues as Jade, first Asuka and Kairi come out, so they argue with Bianca. Jade's music hits. She comes out. All four women start arguing. And then up in the front of the ramp in the background, Kevin Owens and Tama Tonga come barreling through the women and they start fighting on the entrance ramps.
I thought that shit was so funny.
I was like, yes, this is what the girls are like. Like we have issues, but we ain't trying to get in the middle of this. So they back up, which has Kevin and Tama get into the ring and they fight. Kevin with a double leg takedown, but then Solus makes it a 2-on-1. They're double team KO. Officials run down, but Tama Tonga beats up all the officials. And then Randy Orton.
Then I hear voices in my head, and then Randall Keith Orton comes out.
He comes out and he helps, save Kevin Owens, and everyone's ready to fight. There's an attempted RKO on Solus Koa, but then he pushes out of the way in time and leaves. And, this, we'll talk about it when we get there, but this sets, we'll just talk about it now, because later in the evening after SmackDown goes off the air, we get confirmation that is going to be the Bloodline versus KO and Randy Orton at Backlash this upcoming week, which I'm super excited about. So this was a lot. They're just like, hey, let's cram 2 of these things in here, because we got the Women's Tag Team Championship match made and the KO Randy versus Bloodline match made for Backlash as well. And then there is one more match that gets made at the end of this evening, which we'll talk about when we get there. Before we go on from this segment, we see Bubba Ray Dudley leaving the SmackDown office and Devon leaving Raw with the draft picks. So the Dudley boys are reading these picks, which,
every single pick, they stayed on the same roster.
Pretty much, and we'll get into
this
that.
This was the most pointless round of the entire draft.
Yes, so the Dudley boys come out, and everyone's shouting, we want ECW, and we want tables. So the third round begins. SmackDown's pick. The first pick of the third round is LA Knight, so LA Knight is staying on SmackDown. Then Raw picks Ricochet, because Ricochet is going to be staying with his boo thing, Samantha, on Raw, so that's always a good thing. SmackDown drafts the Bloodline, so the Bloodline is sticking around on SmackDown, which makes a lot of sense. And Raw picks our good old fella, Sheamus, to retain. So yeah, this is the most pointless round of the whole draft because everybody stayed where they were. Yeah. Let's move on. So next up, number 1 contenders match, Tiffany versus Naomi. I thought this was a really fun match. There was a good little back and forth. And as we were getting to the closing segments of this match, a random Nia Jax appeared and laid out everyone, which caused the DQ. So this match ended in a no contest. I was like, oh, Nia Jax, you've already made your presence known on SmackDown, which is fantastic. Which means I feel like after Backlash, we're going to get Bayley and Nia squaring up, which I'm actually kind of excited about.
Just good, against Bayley, an official feud to have.
Yes, because after Backlash, we have, and I'm not counting King and Queen of the Ring in Saudi Arabia, because that is technically the next PLE, but we're not covering it here. So the next one for us is going to be Clash at the Castle, which is in June. And then we have Money in the Bank in July, and then SummerSlam in August. It's going to be a fun summer. So next up, we get backstage segment with the Street Profits and B-Fab. This basically sets up that next week on SmackDown in France, because the Street Profits won that Fatal 4-Way number 1 contenders match last week. They will be taking on A-Town Down Under for the WWE Tag Team Championships next week, which is going to be fantastic. And then we cut back to Teddy Long, holla holla. And
dude, it was so nice to see him.
I love Teddy Long, man. I really, really do. We cut to Teddy Long and JBL leaving the SmackDown and Raw offices. So those two are going to be giving us our next draft picks. So we cut to commercial. And when we come back, this is what I wanted to see from Karrion Kross in the final testament this whole darn time that we brought them back. Karrion Kross and Scarlett are outside of the arena where they have somebody with a phone and a camera following them. And we see the final testament beating up New Catch Republic. And Karrion Kross says that they're going to continue to rule whether they're on Raw or SmackDown. I'm like, where was this the entire few months that we had the final testament? I needed this viciousness from Karrion Kross as a character and the final testament, because this was a smart move to beat up on New Catch Republic, who I would say are kind of over with the audiences as baby faces.
Yeah, this is exactly what they were doing with the other people, but it just made it really weird.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they're doing something. They're continuing them after Mania. They're not like just burying them.
Right. And, we'll see what ends up happening. I still think so not to spoil anything, but AOP and Final Testament will be making their appearance on NXT this upcoming week because it's part of week 2 for spring break-in for NXT, which is like a 2-week special. The boys of AOP will be taking on Nathan, Frazier, and Axiom for those NXT Tag Team Championships. So we'll see. I think Nathan and Axiom are retaining, but who knows?
It would be kind of like cool if they really want to make AOP and those guys look really devastating for them to like beat those two, have the NXT Tag Team belts, and then come up and beat like somebody on SmackDown and get like A-Town Down Under's belts and have like double tag champs.
That would
Just
be
like
fantastic.
make the Final Testament look like a final boss as character for the tag team division, but I don't think they're gonna do that.
We shall see what happens with all of that. So then out come Teddy Long and JBL, and this is the fourth, this is the fourth and final round of the on-air picks for the WWE draft for this year. So SmackDown picks AJ Styles, so AJ is staying on SmackDown.
Oh, who would have thought? It's not like he doesn't have a world championship match.
Right, that's crazy. Raw selects which was nice in the rules too, because the rules stated that tag teams and factions were going to be staying together. Nobody was getting split. So Raw picks all of Alpha Academy. So Chad Gable, Otis, Akira Tozawa, and Maxime Dupri are all staying on Raw. Switching from Monday Night. Yeah, Dupri switching and heading on over from Monday Night Raw to SmackDown. Andrade will be on SmackDown. I was like, oh, him and Charlotte are about to run things because Charlotte's not going anywhere. Which also, anybody who's on the injured list is not eligible to be drafted either. So that was also a thing. So Jimmy, Charlotte, Shotzi, like all the people out on injury were not eligible in the draft. So we'll see where they land when they come back from those injury. And then our last pick of the whole entire night, getting called up and moved over from NXT, is Kiana James, which, no shade, I love Kiana. I was like, whoa, okay. I thought Lyra would have gotten picked before her. But honestly, I'm happy for Kiana, and I think Kiana's going to be joining some other NXT girls in Raw, in Kaden Katana, Ivy Nile, Indy Hartwell. Like, Kiana's going to be in good company.
Part of that 1%.
Yes. So I'm excited. I can't wait. So congratulations to Kiana. And honestly, I'm kind of glad she's moving up because I feel like we've reached the end of everything that, she wants for her character to do in NXT. So congratulations to Kiana and everybody else. So when Kiana gets called, we get a cut back to, the NXT arena with Jackie Redmond interviewing Kiana, and everyone's super happy for her. You see Shawn Michaels come up and hugs her, and she's excited to show what she's got on Monday Night Raw. And I'm like, Shawn Michaels, this is why we love you. You love those kids. So we cut to commercial. Caleb Braxton, when we come back, Nick Aldis and Caleb Braxton are backstage. So Nick Aldis just talks about everything. And he makes it official that for Backlash, it's going to be a triple threat for the WWE Women's Championship with Naomi, Tiffany, and Bayley. And then Teddy Long announces that it's Holla Holla tag team match, playa. It's the Bloodline versus Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, which makes me super excited.
The only thing that was missing from that was him going, "You're going against The Undertaker."
Oh, that is so fantastic. Which then finally leads us into our main event of the evening. Yeah, we kind of breezed through all of this because not much really happened this SmackDown. But we get into our main event, Cody Rhodes versus Carmelo Hayes. And minus the double kind of like crossroads, like cutter botched because of timing issues, I thought this was my favorite match of the whole evening. This was fun to watch, even with the minor mess up they had.
I think that was planned.
That also could be fair too.
I feel like Cody hurt his shoulder.
We hope that's not a real injury, because Cody, we can't have you go out, bro.
Especially right after you winning the belt from Roman, just to get hurt 2 weeks later.
This was a really fun match, and honestly, this match was really, let's be real, was to highlight all the stuff Carmelo can do for the main roster audience who may not be watched NXT and is not familiar with Carmelo's work, this was a fun main event to highlight Carmelo. But Cody Rhodes does hit him with the crossroads because Carmelo tries to do it, but then Cody reverses it, hits him with the crossroad. Cody Rhodes pins Carmelo Hayes, but this was a really, really fun match. So this was honestly, so as we kind of get into the end of it, so that is where SmackDown ends after this match. Honestly, I think this was a good SmackDown.
It was entertaining.
It was entertaining. I mean, the draft was kind of pointless for most of it. However, I think the biggest winners of the draft were the NXT because the main roster SmackDown picked up Carmelo, and Raw has Braun and Kiana joining their ranks, which is really nice.
I think the entire purpose of the draft is for the NXT kids.
And honestly, on this upcoming Monday Night Raw, yeah, go ahead.
They moved like what? 2 people? Nia Jax got moved.
Andrade got moved.
And
Braun got moved to Raw.
But
pretty much everyone else stayed where they were at. I am interested to see though, because we only had 4 rounds on SmackDown, but Monday Night Raw is going to have 6 rounds. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Now, before we get into our final ratings, because we had some off-air draft picks as well that happened. So they went through everybody else in the pool that was available, and we got through everyone who was there. So let's get into it. So let me pull up this list real quick. So as far as everyone that was left to be drafted for the Friday version, SmackDown, and so I will read off all the names. So by the end of it, SmackDown picked up, well, technically they stayed the same place. So SmackDown has picked to keep the OC on SmackDown. So that is Michin and the Good Brothers. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson are going to be staying on SmackDown. They also drafted Cedric Alexander and Ashante the Adonis. So that little tag team is going to be staying on SmackDown. And moving back to the main roster from NXT is Baron Corbin is coming back to SmackDown.
Hey, finally.
Finally, which makes me sad because now
they should have sent him to Raw so he could have joined Braun Breaker.
Yeah, that was my only gripe too. I was like, but I want the Wolf Dogs on main roster, but never say never. Who knows? They might reunite down the line at some point. And then on the Raw side of things, this is mostly a women's heavy pick. Raw has selected to keep Shayna Baszler on Monday Night Raw. I need them to start using her more often because I feel like it's criminally underrated that she doesn't get used that much. Raw also keeps Zoe Stark, and I think they were on SmackDown, but I think moving to Monday Night Raw is Alba Fire and Isla Dawn.
I forgot they were there.
Yes, because we haven't seen them in forever. So
we haven't seen them since before Mania.
Yeah, so hopefully that means that we're going to see more plans for them because these two are amazing talent. And then the final pick for Monday Night Raw is that Ivar is staying on Monday Night Raw. Yo, I'm looking forward to that match between him and Oba Femi this upcoming week on NXT for that North American Championship. It's going to be meat. So those were the picks that happened off there. So pretty much almost everybody stayed where they were at. The only exception is Baron Corbin is got moved from NXT to SmackDown. So this is fantastic. I just want NXT on this upcoming Monday to just like throw caution to the wind and start grabbing superstars. Be like, you get over here.
NXT drafts, right?
NXT drafts, Roman Reigns.
Right. Like we're like, man, we get all right, Roman. Okay. Oh, Charlotte Flair. We don't care if she's injured. We want it.
So good.
Oh, champions or you can't draft champions?
Yeah.
Watch me do it anyways.
Right. That'd be hilarious. But Minnie, we reached the end of this SmackDown review. So what is your final empanada rating for a very not like needle moving in the direction of storytelling wise, but it's still an entertaining show?
I will give this, in the sense of a SmackDown, I'll give it a 7 because it was entertaining. For a draft, a fucking 2.
All right, so yeah, let's do that. Let's grade everything. I agree with you on the draft. Actually, I agree with you on both. I'm giving this SmackDown a 7 because I was entertained with the whole presentation of the show and the atmosphere was fantastic. But as far as the draft picks goes, minus Carmelo, Braun, and Kiana, who were the real winners of this whole entire first night, the rest of it was kind of wah-wah, with the exception of Andrade and Nia Jax coming to SmackDown, because I'm excited to see them on Friday nights, which is going to be so good. But I also give this week's SmackDown a 7, but night 1 of the draft gets a 2 because, Yeah, it wasn't no bueno. Well, that concludes this week's Friday Night Faction review. Next week is going to be interesting because we're going to, because normally the way we review SmackDown, we're going to be reviewing SmackDown after Backlash, but then who knows what's going to happen. We'll cover that during the review of Backlash. Like, this is what happened on the Go Home SmackDown. Now let's talk about Backlash. So we won't have a normal review next week, but next week the WWE crew will be getting together to review Backlash on, funny enough, it's going to be on Cinco de Mayo. So tune in for a spicy review of Backlash. It's going to be fantastic. Me and Minnie are going to get up on out of here. But as always, from all of us here at Friday Night Faction and the rest of the BC Wrestle Pod boys, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, stay iconic, and more importantly than anything, you always deserve to finish your story. We'll see you for Backlash and Monday Night Raw for the second night of the draft. Until then, ta-ta for now.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another Vibe Tribe production. What's gonna happen next time? Well, you're gonna have to tune in to find out. But until then, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, and as always, make sure that you keep the good times rolling. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.